You may start whenever you're ready.
Chair, we're going to defer to CETA on 24 for the QC bill. And maybe, are we starting with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to start with
40.
Well, since Labor's not here, if it's okay with the members, maybe we can move down to old business, since we do have CETA here, and then come back to new business under for 2447 labor, and then 2440 for the business license. Any objections? Okay. All right. Let's move down to old business. Under old business, we have House Bill 24-4 HD1. This bill was introduced by Representative Julie Ogo, and it proposes to amend the Investment Incentive Act of 2000 by refining eligibility criteria for qualifying certificates, strengthening procedural safeguards, mandating detailed reporting on investments and performance, and enhancing oversight mechanisms. Floor is now open for any comments or questions by the committee members. Or if you're okay, maybe we can give the floor to the executive director to share any comments or concerns or recommendations to the bill before you ask your questions. Would you guys prefer that he provide some context or any feedback from CETA, then ask your questions, or do you want to just ask your questions now? Okay. Director Sasamoto, please feel free to share any additional comments or insights you may have with the committee. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Senator Magofian, members of the committee. I also want to thank the House for introducing this bill, the intent of improving the QC legislation. So I'll just go through what the bill adds and removes and provide my feedback on each. So at the very beginning of the bill, it talks about, and I provided comments on this, I believe, multiple times. So the bill proposes to add retirement homes and dialysis centers for Rhoda and Tinian. Of course, if we want to have it explicitly stated in the law, that's okay. I just want to point out that the existing law, line 14, is like the universal qualifier that allows for any and all developments that are beneficial to the Marianas. So that language already exists, so there's nothing preventing nursing homes or dialysis centers. However, if the intent is just have it explicitly stated, then I have no other comment. It also removes casino gaming. The original law allows for casino gaming in hotels on Rhoda and Tinian. This law removes that requirement completely. I have no objections or anything to this, but my previous comment on this was just to perhaps if an analysis was done to see what jobs were created, or if there are any current jobs in these industries, and what the impacts would be removing these options from Rhoda and Tinian, if there are any current jobs, for example. Just something to think about. But I do support it as well, as it is in line with removing gaming activities on the island of Saipan. This proposed bill also wants to add an investment report covering whether QCs were issued, whether investors were interested, and if we should add new industries to the QC law. I don't see any issues with this report. I mean, we are required to maintain this data anyways, and we can report on demand. However, if it wants to be explicitly stated in the law, we can do that as well. I just find number 2 quite interesting, because to report on any investors interested, that's going to be a very long report. But the good thing is, at least we'll be providing the information. The other thing that it adds is the authority for CETA to amend the minimum capital investments. I believe we already have that authority in the law, but again, if it's going to be explicitly stated again, I support that as well. It also adds that QC applicants must submit a third-party due diligence review from an entity certified by CETA. It doesn't talk about who bears the expense. I would assume that the applicant would bear the expense. It would be nice if that's explicitly stated. And this is in line with what CETA is already doing anyways. We are doing due diligence reviews. And we actually, on our recent trip to Select USA this past May, because of all the momentum we've built up, we were actually approached by 3 different companies, one major that you would all recognize if I mention the name. And they all do high-level background checks all the way to the point of shareholders, investors, shell companies. So they literally did a free background check on the investors we're currently working with, just as an example, and everything looks good. So I'm good about that. So regarding this third-party review, if it just explicitly states who's responsible for the expense, because that will come up in our discussions with investors. That would be nice. That would be a good thing. And the fact that they submit to it, but we have to select the due diligence contractor, that I agree with as well. And then, but at the same time, I wonder if it would be possible to maybe amend that language to not make it a requirement, but a option for the agency. Because these things can be costly, and there could be times in the future where perhaps financial situation is not ideal, perhaps for CETA, I don't know, but it could happen, right? And so perhaps having the flexibility to do it as an option as opposed to being required, because one day perhaps, if worst case scenario, perhaps they could not afford the expense. Just something to think about. And it also adds that language about QC applications not being entertained within 90 days. It says that we have to inform applicants of the status as well as provide a justification to the governor for the delay. We do that anyways as standard practice, but again, if it wants to be explicitly stated in the law, I support that as well. And then section 9, this is where I noticed something. So it talks about the condition of benefits. So like the public benefit requirement, right? It says that public benefits are now called community development projects. And community development projects must be 10% of the total investment, if I'm reading the law correctly. But now I'm wondering if the language of this law is considering the type of industries we're currently attracting. So if the total investment, for example, like our current investors, if the total investment is going to equal 200 to 250 million, that's a $25 million public benefit. That's quite substantial. Maybe perhaps we're thinking of smaller developments, but that might be a deterrent. It could be a deterrent to investors knowing that they're going to invest $250 million, but they have to, account for another 10% on top of that for public benefit. Because requiring a minimum of 10%, that may need to be reconsidered depending on the type of development we're bringing in. Just something to think about there as well. Because we do know that the current investors are concerned about costs and what the total cost of doing business is here in the Marianas. And they like that to be predictable. So. And then the last thing is that it also, under that same section, it talks about scholarships, and it breaks down the scholarships as targeted. I actually like the way the distribution of the scholarship. I'm just wondering if it would be possible to provide the developer with the option to determine the percentage allocations to those specific areas. Because right now it's very specific. I'm just wondering if that flexibility could be considered. And last thing, again, I'd just like to, on behalf of the chairman of CETA, he extends his apologies for not being able to attend. He's actually going to be on a call with the Food and Nutrition Administration here. So he said that he wanted me to make sure I extend his apologies as well. And I have 2 final things, 2 possible recommendations that I have mentioned before that I would like the Senate to consider. The first one is, I believe we already have the mechanism to do this already, and we went through legal, but it would be nice if we stated explicitly as well that CETA would have the authority to give conditional approvals for QCs. And we're seeing this right now, and that it's actually a good need, and luckily we have some flexibility to do it. But if it's explicitly stated in the law, that would be great. It will really help what we're trying to do in terms of bringing in developers. And the last thing, and this one maybe is a little bit more out of the box thinking, but I know I've mentioned it before, but perhaps considering whether CETA should have some type of ability to negotiate public land lease rates, perhaps, or incentivize it somehow. I mean, if that's possible in any way, just thinking long-term, big picture here. I understand that it crosses perhaps some boundaries, but just something, if you're not aware, if it's not out there, how would you know, right? So I wanted to put it out there. Just something to consider as well. And that are all the comments I have, and I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Jesus Masi, Director. At this time, I open the floor for any of the committee members to ask their questions, if any. Recognize Senator Donald.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director. In one of your proposal, you mentioned a conditional approval. How is that different from, let's say, a yearly review and determining whether recipient is meeting its obligations?
Yeah, so we're talking a conditional approval on the front end, on the application side. So for example, what we're actually seeing is, and luckily the language provides some flexibility. So what we're seeing, for example, one of the requirements, and this is the main issue, is to have a eligible QC application would like you to submit interest in land, the land where your project is going to be located. So we know that, for example, one of our investors, they submitted a QC, they submitted a public land lease application. The QC is moving, for example, let's just say the QC is moving, the public land lease is not moving. Without that public land lease being executed, the developer is pretty much stuck in limbo and has to wait. So the QC stays in limbo. They're not getting, nothing's moving, nothing's being finalized. However, with conditional approval, we can condition the QC, if awarded, right, if recommended to the governor, on them obtaining that land lease. So we already know they're pursuing it, but because of the process, there's a timing issue now. Do we want now developers to be subject to this, for example, this timing issue and not being able to move anywhere else? It would be good for us, even with discussions with developers, and even just making economic sense, to allow us to provide for a condition where, okay, for this land requirement, you have a signed commitment from your company, like an undertaking, that you are going to pursue, for example, this public land lease, and within 6 months you will obtain the lease. Within that 6 months, if you have an approved QC, you do not accrue or get any benefits whatsoever until that condition is met. However, the trade-off for the investor and the compromise for the government is that once that clock starts during that 6-month period, it could even be 1 year, right? They could request for a year. The clock for their QC benefits already start, despite them not receiving the benefits because they haven't fulfilled the condition. That's the protection for the government. It incentivizes the developer to move quicker and get that land. And by the way, if they don't secure that undertaking, that piece of land, they don't get the QC whatsoever. So there's no risk to the government other than time, using up our time.
Okay.
But in terms of financial risk, there's none.
Do you happen to have a proposed language that would kind of address all of that and what you're trying to say?
I can definitely develop that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Going over to the part about the investment in casino operations, how is it different from, let's say, one of the authorized activity or investment is a resort, hotel, and condominiums, but if that resort or hotel wants to maybe put a casino operation within the resort, does that does that affect the resort's QC application, or would that, based on the current proposal right now in front of
the
us?
current law, it's allowed for on Rhode Antinian, but with the amendment, it would be completely disallowed.
So if a resort were to come in and just say operates as a resort, and then later on down the line decides to invest in casino operations, that QC would be null and void?
Yes, it is ineligible, yes.
Okay, so that would be the issue right now if that were to move forward with including that language on any.
If it has retroactive application and there's any current QCs in that industry, then I would assume it would affect them, yes.
I know that the public benefit included in a distribution to scholarships, but I also know that one of your most recent QC recipient, I guess it was proposed to include assistance for medical referral. Is that something that you think is working, or has it worked with the current applicant, or we have yet to see any benefit from that?
Actually, the applicant is required already to have been implementing that. So we're actually working with CHC, developing the plan, the procedures, and everything. And currently, it's looking like everything's looking like it's going to be okay. And the collaboration between the applicant, us, and CHCC, so far everything is looking okay. But the applicant, actually, the beneficiary, actually, not the applicant, the beneficiary is actually ahead of the game. They've actually even purchased like stretchers and things like that they weren't even required to do. So they're actually going a little bit further than and we're actually elated about that. But it looks like it's we're hoping that everything will be smooth. Procedures are being finalized, and it's actually a pretty good. I believe it's a pretty good benefit. Yeah.
Would you support an amendment to that section where a portion is allocated to scholarships and then a certain portion is allocated to a public health benefit in that sense?
Senator, that's a great idea. And our QCs, that's the nature of our QC, is we are extending benefits to potential developers, and we, of course, it's going to be mutually beneficial. And if we want to add in a medical benefit, medical referral to all QC applicants, if that's what we're trying to do, I mean, that's going to be a great benefit for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one last thing, you brought up an issue with the 10%. Would you be open to a proposed cap, maybe, instead of a percentage? No more than X amount? Or?
I don't necessarily like caps in this situation, because I would like it to be for me, I see it as being a negotiation between the developer and the Marianas. And if there's no set criteria, we don't allow for developers to be able to lowball, for example, or to figure out what the highball is. We can literally negotiate based on the overall benefit perceived and projected, and try to negotiate the best deal, as opposed to being locked in. I like the fact that we're trying to have a 10% benefit, but considering the type of development we're attracting now, I mean, $25 million public benefit, of course that'd be great for us, but I honestly believe that could be a deterrent. So if we could just have flexibility to determine it based on the actual, because every proposal, every QC application is going to be very different. And so it really depends on the job creation and things like that, right? So I would feel that we would need some type of flexibility. Like, you could recommend a cap, but allow the agency to use its own due diligence to determine what's reasonable.
What about a tiered system where anything in excess of is required to pay an X amount of percent into?
That could be a potential, but I can see investors now coming in, because now we're talking to investors from multiple industries. I can see them coming in and comparing what benefits are being extended to one industry as opposed to the next, and that could be an issue. Okay. So if there's a way to provide for like universal application, I think that would be best.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director.
Thank you very much.
For now, at this time, Chair.
Thank you, Vice. Just some follow-up questions before I recognize the other members. So on the 10%, is it something that, I mean, can we keep it at 10%, but maybe do it gradually so it's not all up front, and then the 25 million is not so overwhelming for the investor to consider? So maybe break it down into gradual years. So like maybe the first 5 years, this percentage, right? And then I guess subsequent to that, every other, 3 to 5 years again, another, something like that, right?
That's more reasonable as opposed to the issue currently being silent, and it could be assumed that it's upfront.
Yeah.
So that could definitely help. Having that flexibility to negotiate will always help, because we know when it comes to working with developers, it's all negotiation.
Yes.
There's nothing set in stone.
Yes, because I like the idea of 10%, and we really do need to, keep the best interest for our people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as long as we have some flexibility, and it's not, and the language is clear that it's not upfront, I think that consideration could be a little bit more, accepted by the investor. So
for example, like one alternative could be throughout the life of the QC.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can work on the language to ensure that we are also getting, the benefits for our people. Okay, so we can work on language, on that language. Just another follow-up. So, as for CETA to negotiate public land leases, we probably need to get a little bit more clarification and guidance from our legal counsel to ensure that we are not infringing upon DPL, as they are the department that's responsible for public land leases. Is it something that you've already kind of discussed with the secretary?
Well, in dealing with the multiple developers and collaborating with the different agencies like public lands, the issue has come up just short, informal type discussions. Never really anything official. Nothing, no commitments, no nothing like that. But just something that we realize it will it can and it's very likely going to be an issue with developers. And so it's come up where, you know, we just recommended, like, I wonder if we had the ability to perhaps negotiate a little bit, but nothing was ever committed. Nothing was ever really truly discussed. Like, this
I
is
mean, I
what we
can
wanna
see
do.
how maybe we can make some exceptions for public land leases that are associated with developments, right? Especially ones who are pursuing the QC. But I would think that we may need to make some amendments under public land
Yep.
to allow CETA. So that would
Yeah.
take a little bit more time
yeah.
to
Yep.
have that discussion, right?
Yes,
And-
I can see that I'm opening up a can that not the best can of worms right now, but just something that I thought I'd just throw out there.
No,
you know.
yeah, it's definitely, I can see the advantages to that, right? Because it helps expedite the process. We're not saying we're just gonna fast track everything. No, of course not. But we have to start looking at things in a different light, right? So especially when it comes to developments, and we do have investors on the sidelines waiting to invest, you know, a larger sum of money to invest. That's definitely something to consider. So for the purpose and interest of this bill, we would probably not entertain that just yet, because I think
Yes.
we will require to
Yeah.
have a lot more conversation
Understood.
with DPL. But I definitely like the idea, and I would definitely support it. So, you know, maybe that's an amendment that we can tackle on at a later time so that we can move forward with this.
It's more of a
particular-
long-term issue, I would
Yes,
say.
yes.
You know, or give perhaps the Secretary of Public Lands, if he doesn't possess that authority right now, to have the flexibility and the protections to do things like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And then I wanted to kind of just touch on the gambling and gaming, because I would definitely like to hear comments from the senators from the two municipalities. It will impact them if that is removed from the existing law. And so at this time, I open the floor back to the committee members. So I recognize Senator Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the issue of public land, you mentioned in your last part of your last comment about giving also maybe public land some say. I thought they already have that authority. What do you mean? Can you explain?
Yeah, I'm not fully aware of the full authority of the Public Land Secretary, but if flexibility with the public land rates, with the additional rent rates, for example, with all the fees and rent associated with public land leases, I'm not sure what current language exists, but if there's anything that perhaps the Secretary might need in terms of flexibility or authority or protection, then I would definitely recommend assisting that agency.
Okay, so you know, I don't. I know we're meeting with one of the big potential investors, Joe Motors. They were in the paper. They met with your office as well as the governor. So is that a concern with that particular investor?
Well, it's not a concern of a particular investor, but it's definitely a concern my office has for all development now and into the future. Definitely.
Oh,
For
but I mean the rates. Is that
Oh, those concerns have been coming up with different investors, yes.
so? I understand that DPL is coming up with a regulation to grant them some flexibility. So there's no such regulation yet.
I'm not aware of that, but if they are coming up with those regulations, that's great. And it's likely in response to what they've been currently dealing with current developers. Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of like your idea where you're saying that if they give them a conditional approval, that the clock starts ticking when you give them a QC approval, right? And they will have 6 months or so to process that. But even if that is the case, they still might not come to an agreement because of the differences in the rate agreement, right? So just the rate itself might prolong that and might not make the project move forward. So how can we put a language to kind of force the issue to because if one party is saying this is how much, right? Even if you give them 2 years, they will never agree, right? So would, for example, for some industry, would it be better to just designate that land to CEDA and say promote this industry in that land, just like we did in a free trade zone where we designate in Rhoda Antinian X size of land and allow the mayor to promote free trade zone activities, right? So is that something that we can do, to designate an area as free trade zone area and give it to CEDA so CEDA can then promote these industries, create employment and revenue just by simply designating a certain part of land.
If CEDA was given the authority to manage that and oversee that land in terms of development, I mean, we would definitely take full advantage of that, but of course, making sure that we're fully accountable and transparent in what we're doing. But that would allow us to, it seems like that would allow us to conduct the negotiation for development in full, as opposed to having to go out to other areas.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I'm going to request that our legal counsel give us a direction if that were an amendment to consider how big a land can we designate under the Constitution for such purposes, for example, to designate 5 hectares or 10 hectares toward certain industries that we want to pursue, and so that then CEDA can package that and move the projects. But I don't know if, because I know that under the Constitution, anything over 5 hectares, over 25 years contract, right, will require legislative approval. But I don't know whether passage of a law falls under that. So I just want to hear maybe from our legal counsel whether such language in any act garner the threshold for legislative approval, no? So that's what I wanna mention on that.
Did you want the legal counsel to respond to your?
No,
Right, this time,
just
or
maybe a request for the chair
Oh, okay.
to work with our legal counsel
Got it.
to kind of like give us a sense of whether that's possible or not.
Okay.
No, at a later
At a
time.
later time, got it.
Yes, but I'm just thinking of my other question. Then I will yield to the other members.
Okay.
Can I ask on the QC? Is there any QC given to gaming operations in the CNMI today?
As far as I'm aware, I don't believe so. In the past, I cannot speak for the past, but as far as I'm aware today, no.
For Saipan Vegas, are they getting QCs?
It's weird because this is not the first time I've heard of that company and a QC, but as far as I know, they don't have a QC. Is that that's that part? I would have to look into the details.
I'm just because we raised earlier the issue of the gaming on Rhoda Tinian, so I'm just kind of wondering whether there's an existing QC. Can you give us a report on that? Whether you're finding whether revenues generated by Saipan Vegas is qualified under the QC benefits?
We'll look into the issue, definitely.
That's all for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, an applicant would have to identify the subsidiaries that they would want to be to receive those benefits. If they did not include those subsidiaries or they weren't approved, then that's not allowed. And there's always certifications of compliance and such. So benefits should not be extended until the proper agencies certify.
Yeah.
So if there's anything in the process that's not proper, it should not be happening. But we will definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, what if the subsidiary is created after the fact, after the QC was approved?
Great question. So the QC allows for expansion of business or new lines of business. So if the subsidiary is an expansion or a new line, then they would be eligible. And
Got
just
it.
for information, expansion also, the definition of expansion also includes renovations.
One final question,
Sure.
Madam Chair. In the listing of businesses that may qualify for QC, you have here internet-related businesses and or businesses engaged in internet commerce, excluding online casino gaming, and that's 100,000 for new and 50,000. What is this?
I would say that's probably for like, I'm not of that generation really, but but I would say that's a lot for like the digital nomads and those people wanting to set up like online businesses and such.
So, but it's not for like if a nomad comes here and rents a house and makes that their housing and their business, they will get a QC for that.
If they meet the minimum capital investment and the application meets the requirements, yes, they would get it. If it's qualified as a beneficial project, yes.
So if a nomad, and I'm in support of this promotion of nomads, digital nomad, but I'm just wondering if they come here, they buy a house, they spend 100,000, their taxes, their first 100,000 in taxes will be forgiven. Will be
Yeah,
what?
that's the minimum capital investment, so that doesn't affect. It's just the whatever application of the percentage of tax abatement or rebate will just be applied to whatever projections of BGR, and then of course the actual earnings.
So can you explain how this, if they invest 100,000, then can you explain what kind of benefit a nomad has? If
Well,
they
I
meet
mean-
the 100,000 threshold?
Well, they're going to set up a business and just be doing business here, operating out here. I mean,
I was just gonna add I don't think they meet the definition of a nomad at that point if they're establishing a business here. Now they're just operating under the other requirements.
yeah, he would know more about this digital nomad space than me.
For the QC, there's a minimum, right, of $1 million investment or 100,000?
Internet-related businesses, it's currently 100 grand,
Oh.
yes. And then of course, TN and Rhoda are 60% of that.
Got it.
So I'm just trying to understand what is this 100,000. So I need to invest 100,000, right? So whatever it is, a nomad invests 100,000, and that means that his taxes and all that will be offset till he recovers the 100,000. So let's say 5 years from now he recovers the 100,000. So we would collect tax from that. From their income subsequent to paying the 100,000.
Oh yes, and you're absolutely right, Senator. So whatever benefits they're requesting for would be, would be mutual to the investment they're making, like exactly like you said. And once that threshold is met, then yes, we start collecting on the taxes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we definitely would not give a 25-year QC for that small of investment because it would be easier paid off much quicker, right? So yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paul. Senator Cruz, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Senator Donald. Okay. So can we take a look at the eligibility, right, under subsection 50202? I wanted to, again, just check with the committee members if they would be okay that the internet, under internet commerce, that excluding online casino gaming will be acceptable for your municipalities. So under eligibility, so there's a list of all the different types of industries that would qualify for a QC, with the exception, so it was stricken out or actually wasn't stricken out. There was an insert of language to exclude online casino gaming. So I want to make sure that, when when we move forward with this bill, that the two municipalities are okay with that language.
If it's solely on internet gaming, I'm okay. I think, however, we need to reconsider those investments in resorts, and that could be the exception. That if they invest in resorts, they are allowed to include a.
So do we feel we need to be explicit in that to ensure that there's no misinterpretation or ambiguity, in the future? So
Yeah, that's
so
something
maybe
I'll prepare an amendment
okay,
for maybe
great.
When we are going to act on this.
Okay, and then we are okay with adding the dialysis centers located in Tinian and Rhoda, right, under eligibility.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may jump in real quick, I
Sure.
was just informed that there are no QCs issued to any gaming establishments.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, we're still going to verify, but just FYI.
Okay. And then I guess under ineligibility is where we would probably need to look at the language under C, because it says any business engaged in casino gambling activities conducted within its hotel, casinos, or casino premises located in the senatorial districts of Tinian and Rhoda may be eligible. So that was stricken out. So maybe that's, we can restore that language back, Senator Donald, if we want to keep it at that.
If it's correct, but if it's just strictly on the gambling activities, separate from any investment. in other
Okay.
activities, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the third-party review. So the director recommends or is asking for clearer language as to who will be absorbing the third-party review. Any recommendations from the members? Director, do you have any idea how much a third-party review would cost?
Unfortunately, I'm in discussions with the company right now, but we have not spoken about costs. And I just realized that, I really wish I had that information on me, because then in this situation, we'd have to figure out, is it going to be on demand as needed, or are they going to require
Just
like
a
a contract?
requirement, yeah.
For example, like will they require like a contract to obligate a certain amount of money? But of course, that'll be up to us to implement the procedure and such, right? But yeah.
So should we leave it at the discretion of CETA to determine whether the cost, I mean, you guys can determine that later, whether it's something that CETA will absorb or transfer it to the applicant? Yeah,
because for example, if it's on a contract basis with us executing a contract between the third party, like for example, like Moody's, right? Moody's, they might require that contract between us. So then we would have to then expect the developer to reimburse us for that specific amount.
Okay.
So yeah.
I feel like if that's something that CETA could
Yeah.
take on without
Okay.
putting the language on the bill itself,
Yeah,
then
okay.
that
Alright.
gives you guys some flexibility to. I mean, since you don't have an idea of what the cost is at this time, then
Okay.
that'll give you some time to look further into.
Yeah. Flexibility is always nice, yes.
Okay. And then, so the members are okay with the additional, so under public benefits and contribution, we would like to add medical referral to the list on top of the scholarship as part of the allocation, 10% allocation. Correct?
Yes.
I think that was Senator Donald.
Maybe 50-50 if
Okay,
but that's something that we can
yeah,
prepare for.
okay.
Chair,
Yes,
on
recognize
the
Senator Paul.
third-party review, it could be something like the legislature can pass a resolution, and that could be a third-party review, right? I mean, because that's why we're asking about casino, or they're getting QC and all that, because, you know, once you guys pass it, the legislature's out of it. Not, we can limit it and say, the legislature shall be provided a copy, and if they don't have any say, they don't respond within 60 days, then it's considered approved. Just so that we can run it by them, and they'll be the ones then to put kind of like a check, right? To see that, to make sure that everything is in order, and they're legal and financially okay, and and it will be like the judicial system, right? Whenever they amend their regulations, they give it to the legislature, and if the legislature don't say anything in 60 days or 90 days, it's passed. It has to be something terrible that will put them together, and both houses have to agree that this is what should be done. That could be something that a language can be put, and that could take care of that due diligence part. What do you think? Is there something? We don't want the legislature to be a monkey wrench there, right? But we put a time frame. If you don't respond in 60 days, then it's approved.
Well, if we engage who we're thinking we may engage for the due diligence reviews, I mean, they're high-level professional, global. So I would think that if we set a time frame of 30-day responses, they would probably get it to us in 15 or sooner. So, but again, we will negotiate all those terms, and we'll make sure it makes sense for the Marianas. And like you said, we cannot have things drag on. So we would expect responses within a certain amount of time, especially if there's language saying if 60 days passes,
So
it's
maybe
automatic.
we can say in lieu, if you have that, then it doesn't have to go to the legislature. If you don't have that, then send it to the legislature. They have 60 days, and if they don't comment, it's approved. Or if you do an independent review, you can forego the legislature.
Well, that would definitely provide, that would speed up the process, definitely.
So something like that, I don't know. It's just that I think we, sometimes there are questions after QCs are approved, right? So this would prevent those questions. So an idea, Chair, just.
Yes, I like that idea, Senator Paul. We would definitely take that into consideration and see how we can incorporate it into the bill before we finalize. Any other questions from the members?
Chair, just to follow up, I know there's a section that says CETA may adjust the minimum capital investment requirements upwards through regulations. Has CETA done that? Is there a new rate for all activities?
This is something we've been discussing, and we're developing, and we have a quote-unquote laundry list of things for the QC that we are proposing to change, and this is definitely one of them. Currently, the amounts listed on the law are attractive for developers, right? Of course, fortunately for us, every applicant so far has far exceeded the minimum, but definitely that's something we can definitely look into to make it more relevant to today's times. But it is kind of like an attraction when they see that the amounts are quite low. But again, we will definitely, having this authority, we will definitely evaluate it.
These rates were established
2000.
maybe several years ago, or decades even.
Yeah, so definitely we'll definitely take
Are you
a look.
having any challenges in trying to adopt the new rates? If that's the case, since we're in the middle of amending the law, that's something that we can also include as part of the amendments to the entire program.
In terms of rates, are you talking about the minimum capital investment?
Minimum capital investment.
What's your question on that?
Are you having any challenges in trying to adopt the new set of rates, or?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. As long as our analysis is reasonable and the amounts that we're going to propose, then we should be okay. Of course, we won't know for sure until we try it for the first time with the first developer that's subject to it. But
Right.
definitely we will consider all the feedback we've gotten. So far, we haven't heard any issues on that yet.
Right. I'm just thinking about this because when Senator Paul mentioned the $100,000 investment, I mean, you can buy a house for how much now? And that could be counted towards your investment, and then that'll.
Well, for the internet related, internet related, yeah, you could say that, yes, if they were to purchase the home or things like that.
Right.
But for the digital nomad, it wouldn't count, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, of course. Consumption.
Yeah. I just had one more. Currently, I know there's been stuff brought up about the public land lease. Is this something that maybe we should consider, that whatever the public land lease rate comes out to, that's agreed upon, is that counted against their total investment? Towards the capital,
Yes.
minimum
Yes.
capital?
Yes, definitely yes. Yes. So right now, for example, the ones who have yet to execute a lease, they're providing estimates. But of course, in collaboration with DPO, we're trying to make sure those estimates are reasonable. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Chair, that is all I have. I guess we'll just wait on any recommendation that the director has on how we should language the conditional approval to their benefit. Maybe that's something that we can also include as part of the global amendments that we're making here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice. I now recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Director. You mentioned there's no QC applicant in the past and even now for Tinian?
For Tinian,
Yes.
I cannot. For the QCs I've entertained, for Tinian specifically, none. But in the past, I'm not familiar.
You're not familiar with the Outer City group?
No.
Okay. Because, I see here that the House removed the casino site, not to be eligible in regards to QC. I'm just wondering, because I remember we've discussed this in the past in regards to qualified certificate. This is to actually to attract new investors to come in, right, and do economic growth, and it's an incentive program for economic growth, right?
Yes. Job creation.
And,
Yes.
is there any question in regards to the QC from potential investors, or any concern that they want an amendment on this, or are they satisfied with the present QC program?
Great question, Senator. So what we're seeing right now, actually seeing from actual developers who are trying to set up here, right, is, for example, we're seeing, and we have received like requests to see if we can expand the length of the QC program beyond 25 years. However, I've been upfront that as the executive director of CETA, as I stand today, I would not support that, because I believe that 25 years is very generous already. So of course, if there's an analysis that's presented to me with the data that proves me wrong, I'll change my position. But currently, I would not support it. But yes, for example, can the QC benefits be extended beyond 25 years? Can QC benefits align with public land lease terms? Like for the length of the public land lease, can the QC follow that? Right? We're hearing a lot of different things. So they're not really not major concerns about the program doesn't work, but like hope for just changing things to make it more advantageous, I guess. Of course, the developer is always looking for the best deal, right? But of course, when we negotiate, we bring them back down to earth. So those are the kind of things we're seeing. Another minor issue maybe is just paying the QC application fee, but for us, that's a very minor issue. Just pay the fee. But really, no major concerns other than the ones that we have, for example, like ensuring we have explicit conditional approval and such, right? And then the ability to maybe support public lands with like lease rates and such. Yeah. But no major concern from the developers again saying, I don't like this program. This program doesn't work, or you should do this.
Yeah, because I remember back then it was, I think, CD allowed 25 years and then an extension for another 25. Do you guys do? Yeah, I remember there's an incident that they extend to another 25 years. That's why I'm very concerned about that.
So
back, not maybe not this time, but back then they approved another extension of 25 years.
So I recall you mentioned this before, and you know, the QC law, the only way that would be possible is if that additional QC that was added on for 25 years was for an expansion or a new line of business. If it was for the same type of business,
It's just 25.
then that would tell me it's didn't
So-
comply with the law.
So this is a tax break from construction when they start, right? They do QC pretty much. It's to give them a break for the duration of the construction, right? And then moving forward, even with BGRT, right?
While they recover, yes.
Is there any way that because BGRT is too, you know, 25 years is too long, and I know that we're giving them tax break on the duration of the project, right? Construction materials and stuff like that. So, is there any way that we can improve that? Or is it working right now with not getting any VGRT on the?
Well, you know, I can't speak for what happened in the past, unfortunately, right? But what I can say now is that CETA, we ensure that, for example, like the last QC we entertained, that whatever investment is being made, that benefits are only extended, you know, in line with with that investment. And of course, people are concerned about abating BGRT, but then you have to keep in mind about we're trying to create jobs and stimulate, you know, consumption, right? You get increased taxes from those increased jobs, all the different activities and such. You bring people back, increase the population, so the tax base grows. I mean, you're trading one thing for another, but you know, if these incentives are what allows us to create the jobs and start stimulating the economy, then you know, I'm all for the QC program because we really need to create the jobs.
Yeah,
I mean, but again, that's why we have to analyze it and make sure we make good recommendations. And my office, we make it a point to provide multiple scenarios in terms of recommendations to, for example, on the QC, so that the multiple scenarios can be considered.
But if you think it's not going to work, then we're not going to take the chances now.
Oh yeah,
Because
definitely.
you know we have a
Definitely.
economic situation here.
Yeah. And you know, like I do say too, even when I go out and promote, we have learned from the mistakes of the past, right? So definitely, we're not trying to repeat the mistakes like we can literally see in front of our eyes, right? So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Director. Are you back, Madam Chair?
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Paul, you have any further questions or? Okay.
What kind of taxes are abated, Director?
Yes, Senator. So we, under the law, it is corporate income tax,
Corporate income.
individual income tax, BGRT, the developer taxes only on Tinian and Rhoda. Oh, there you go. That's a concern, is perhaps can we extend that exemption also to Saipan, for example, right? But I know it was taken out for a reason, so it's like we're going to backtrack again. But that's definitely something like some developers bring up, is these new construction taxes. Like, can we suspend those taxes for the next so years because of the economic situation, for example, right? Well, that we're kind of getting outside of that again, but just overall development, right? Yeah.
But not public land leases, huh?
I'm sorry?
Not DPL leases
What do you mean?
to offset a little of that.
Well, for the developers, if there's any ways to offset those costs, it's always beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paul. Before I recognize Senator Cruz, just real quick, since Senator Cruz raised the topic on Alter City Group, is that a casino company, the Alter City Group? So, oh, no, but I wanted, so I just wanted to hypothetically ask the director. So in the case of the Alter City Group, right, let's say that they did get a QC approved for the island of Tinian, and I would assume that the language in here would take effect, you know, after it's enacted into law. If Alter City Group was given the QC, and then the language was the language as it stands right now is to remove any gambling activities on those two senatorial districts, what would happen to the QC for that particular business?
Well, we would definitely first seek legal advice to see how that the law works within that situation. But if if it applies to that current that beneficiary from that day on, then those activities have to be removed.
Okay.
I am being informed though by my staff that gaming revenues are not included in any QCs. Even if that applicant had a gaming subsidiary, the revenues from the gaming would not even be part of the QC, supposedly, according to this. But again, we will verify.
Okay. And just, you know, just like a business is approved for a QC licensing and should dissolve in the future, that then CETA would be notified, right? And then you guys would make sure that the QC is no longer active or valid.
Yeah, I believe there's procedures in there ensuring that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we require, by the way, beneficiaries have to report, I believe, on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, a semi-annual basis, and an annual basis. So there's a lot of reporting on the beneficiaries.
So would you say that the active QC licensees have been reporting timely?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you. I now recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you. Back to I know that the House removed the casino to be qualified for QC, right, in this bill. Is there any way that maybe perhaps, because I know this is one of the reason why it is attractive to do casino, hotel, and golf course resort, right? Is there any way that maybe perhaps the lawyer can come up with the language for CEDA to be flexible in the event that maybe perhaps if that's the reason why they want to do business with hotel, casino, golf course because of the casino. Is there any way that we can have language there that maybe CEDA can be able to determine whether can be allowed to give QC or not, rather than just removing the whole thing?
Well, when it comes to the issue of gambling, given that's a deep community issue,
Do you agree that to remove this?
well, you know, that's a community issue for Rhode and Tinian, right? I cannot speak on their behalf, but I would just be concerned about whether there's any current jobs in those industries on those islands and the impact it would have on those individuals and their families, and what does that mean? But that has to be, again, weighed against the overall pulse of the communities from those areas, and whether they want gaming activity or not. So then it would have to be a cost benefit, right? Those who hold those positions, for example, which are probably few, if any, versus what the community may want, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's gonna have to be.
Understand that, but
your
you know, to give you the flexibility to make it attractive.
I mean, if we had the authority in the law to do that, then definitely we would do all of our due diligence to ensure that that we analyze that industry and make a determination whether it be beneficial or not. But again, we could come back and say it's not beneficial, you know, so it could go either way. But if we had that authority for flexibility, we would definitely do due diligence to make the best decision.
Senator Cruz, I think it's up to the committee at this point to whether keep the language there, or because right now it's stricken out, right? So the author of the bill is recommending that we remove gaming in its entirety from the 2 senatorial district. You know, but if you feel that we should leave it in there for flexibility purposes, I mean, just because it's there doesn't mean that you know, you are encouraging, you know, at this time for gaming businesses to come on board. But what you don't want to do is restrict the islands from, you know, from potential opportunities with investors, like you were saying, right? It almost goes hand in hand with the casino, the resort, and the golf. Right. So if we leave the language as is, or the bill as is right now, where it's stricken out, that would definitely remove the opportunity for future. Right. And that's why I asked the committee members earlier on whether or not you want to keep the language as is right now, where it's completely removing gaming from the QC process, or remove the striking out of that language. I mean,
Yeah, that's the reason.
I mean,
why
you represent Tinian, so
That's the reason why I raised this subject, because you know, casino is one of the industry that is money making industry. No, besides tourism, because
Mhm.
we don't have anything here in the cinema
Yeah.
unless there's a big company that willing to come in and invest, a manufacturing company. But we're not. I hope that they're reaching up to SIDA at this time. But casino industry is one of the money making industry. It's just not. It's not working in the. It supposed to be working, but when there's a lot of negativity and no support with the cinema government and business community, that's why I'm kind of like, it really bothers me to see that it's totally out, and I know that it will not be attractive for casino industry to come in if it's. But like I said, if we give you for example, then we find the proper language to put in to have your department be able to have a flexibility that if someone comes in and they choose to do business here but requesting for a QC, is there any way that maybe your department can be able to to see how we can do to attract them in rather than come and just leave because it's no longer attractive for them to do business here with casino because of not having that opportunity. So I'm just
Well,
trying to find a way, no?
if we had the authority regarding that industry, like exactly what you said, I mean, it would be the responsibility of this office to go through that process, fairly, competitively, and legitimately, right? As opposed to perhaps the perceptions of the previous casino case, for example. So if we were to entertain that industry in the future, it would definitely be done differently, especially if it's being done through CETA, because there would be due diligence and fairness and transparency in the process. So that could make a difference. But again, I don't speak for the people from the communities, so I can only speak objectively in general.
Then, Madam Chair, Senator, just briefly, Department of Commerce doesn't have a particular position on the gaming issue other than that we'd underscore that there will be unintended consequences on the economic development on those islands. And in our letter we just highlight, or in our comments we highlight that we should probably do an analysis on the impacts on job creation, the workforces there in both of the senatorial districts and revenues, because those are medium to long-term effects that will impact the greater Commonwealth.
Right.
So that's the Commerce position.
Thank you for sharing that, and I think that's important. For me, Senator, sometimes I feel like it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and then go through the hoops. Because right now, the law allows for gaming activities right on the two senatorial districts. But if we pass this bill with that language stricken out, and then in the future, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years from now, things got better and the community feels, that they would be in support of gaming activities on the island, then they would have to come back and make the amendments and all that. I don't see the risk or the harm in leaving that language in there for now. I mean, it's up to the municipalities and the agencies who are reviewing these applications to ensure that those analyses are being done prior to any approval of, especially in the gaming industry, right? So it's just a resource there for future investment should there be any interest. But it doesn't necessarily mean that because it's there that they're gonna, have gaming right now. So for me personally, I would rather, keep the language as is right now, where it allows the CNMI, most especially to municipalities, to have that opportunity should it, come in the future, and not remove it. But I'll leave it to Rhoda and Tinian to make that decision, because this language is, specifically for the two senatorial districts. Recognize Senator Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, separate issue. Going back to section 6 requirements, I know Senator Paul proposed a recommendation that under due diligence, maybe go through the legislature. Do you know why the House took out the language that came after that?
Mm-hmm.
Because you brought it up that the due diligence is being done by a third party and all of that, but that's a portion that the House took out entirely. So it just stops at due diligence, but it doesn't specify to what manner. The current proposal took out the conducted by a third party that has been certified by CETA.
Sorry, Senator, I'm just trying to find that specific section.
Are you on are you looking at the legislation or on the statute?
I'm looking at the House bill. Yep.
It's on
Okay.
page 10, if you're looking at the same kind of file. Section 6, 50206 requirement.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that section is written that way. I don't understand. Maybe they just forgot to put review in.
So it should end at review, just a due diligence review.
A due diligence review as specified in the statute. I guess a due diligence review as certified by CETA, as referenced in the statute.
Yeah, so that's the language he took out. Conducted by a third party that has been certified by CETA. So there could be any process of due diligence.
So it seems like that 3-word line is not in the original law and was added in. So maybe they just forgot to add in the additional
do you
language.
have that language in the current law that says
No,
conducted by
no,
a third
no.
party?
There is no, the current law, as far as I understand it, there is no requirement for any third-party review, or due diligence review. But of course, we do that internally, anyways. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that section.
Any other members? Senator Paul.
Chair, I guess we're ending discussion on QC, but since Derek is here, I like to take this opportunity tonight because, again, there's this developer before our government, and they want to invest tens of millions, and you pretty much agree on a QC, but the problem is on the public land lease, right? That's my understanding, right?
Well, for example, without getting into too much detail, there's the base rent, right, which is a percentage of appraised value, and the good thing about that is it's paid over time. The other portion is called additional rent, and again, this is me not knowing what public lands has done, regulation amendments, things like that, right? They could have already addressed this, but the additional rent, for example, states that the more money you make, the more we take from you, right? And these developers we're attracting now, if you look at the current law, the amounts are so low. Like I think it stops at 20 or 25 million or 12 million, something like that. But the developers we're dealing with today are 50 to 250 million, way beyond what that law or regulation ever expected, I guess. So imagine 1.5% of $200 million in revenue. You know, that's $3 million. I don't know where you would pay $3 million in rent anywhere in this world, for example, right? So as a developer, if you were told, oh, this is your base rent, this % of your appraised value, okay, but also there's another rent. So the more money you make, the more we take. And by the way, your projections, you're going to pay $3 million a year. I've been told by a developer, might as well go back to the United States.
So my point is, we're trying to do this legislation, trying to encourage development, but yet the bigger, the elephant in the room is something else, right? I mean, so how do we address that? Where, you know, in this legislation, where if the recommendation by CEDA, because of the magnitude of the project or something, might click something to happen at DPL or with the legislative approval. How do we address that? Because I'm telling you, in Rhoda, we have the Rhoda Resort Golf Course, we have the Pau Pau Hotel, we have so much public land, but there's no development, right? And how do we, even if we have all of these QCs, I don't see anything moving because, you know, they need a little bit more push, right? Incentive, and that's the public land. And I know that, you know, we're saying MPOT. Yeah, but what is MPOT making in Rhoda? Nothing, right? Because they're sitting there undeveloped. And I don't want that to happen here also, where this company is going to create employment, and skilled workers required, and shipping costs will drop significantly. There are many benefits, but because of this issue on the base rent and additional rental, what's your recommendation in this law that we can put in here?
Well, again, you know, I have to apologize because, you know, DPL is not here, and I really feel comfortable having such discussions with them not being at the table. But again, without knowing the legal ramifications and the situations involved with like the two different agencies, I mean, if CETA had the ability to, I don't know, somehow provide some type of incentive on that rent or negotiate the rate somehow, I mean, that would allow us to, you know, to have more, to do deeper conversations with the developer. But then again, you know, I feel uncomfortable overstepping our authority or our bounds. So just collaborating with public lands would be good. But if they are given the tools, equipment, the language to be, you know, flexible and protected to be able to make decisions that, you know, that favor development, I mean, that would be great.
So could a language be put in here that says, if a due diligence is performed, right, and a QC is approved by CEDA, so, you know, put in some strong requirement, then it clicks something about the public land, like maybe forces, like you try to recommend that, then DPL, it should trigger you to make a recommendation on the lease payment for the land, make a recommendation to the legislature, and then the legislature will, if they can do it by law, do something, triggers an action by outside of DPL, because DPL, of course, they're mandated to follow certain laws, right? But if you really feel this is a good project and it meets certain thresholds, and they do the due diligence report, and you feel it's such a good project, it triggers a report to the legislature, and then the legislature then, you know, maybe triggers something to happen with the public land lease with a report from you recommending that this is an appropriate lease amount or something like that.
Well, I cannot speak on the legal aspect of it, right? Because I'm not. Of course, the attorneys have to look into that. But I mean, that would address some of the issues we're currently facing. But I mean, perhaps, you know, given there may be conflict within the two with the two laws or enabling statutes, it would maybe a good idea would be to bring the agencies together to the table and have this discussion together for future, you know, planning.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm just very concerned. I don't know how si mapul manama si pagi ko na miyata na Madam Chair. Za no gua oportunidad za tisinyata na bring this over the line na klase na is frustrating. Za no pero di QC I public land problema luta gua rota resort gua popo teo bula sa na tono, but we cannot promote it because you know you just can't develop the land. You know there's this competing interest and it's frustrating. We need to create employment, revenue, CUC, Toreno, you know. Thank you, Madam Chair, Dispensazo.
Malika, Senator Po, thank you no bring up and nagisa. That's one of the reasons why I actually wrote the letter to DPL is to encourage, you know, DPL to move with some of the applications, the public land lease applications, not because I'm, you know, lobbying for any specific business, right, who's applying, but simply to, of course, we expect them to do their due diligence and whatever responsibilities that they have within their scope of duties to ensure that, you know, all the reviews and the analysis and all the requirements are met, you know, before approving the application. But if an application has been sitting on, you know, with the department for, you know, a prolonged period of time, you know, there has to be a reason why that delay is happening, and we just want to know what those delays are, what's contributing to the bottleneck, if any. I did see the article this morning from DPL that there are no delays on their end with regards to the 4 applications that are with them, but how, you know, I guess the next question is, what is the standard operating procedure when an application is received? What is the timeline? What is the duration of from inception of the application being received to the review to whatever other requirements that they have? But there has to be an established timeline. And honestly, you know, from the information that I received, that application has been sitting with DPL for over 4 weeks now. The secretary did mention that sometimes it might take 30 days and up to 60 days. But, you know, since, and I know we don't want to ask the director to, you know, share a lot of the specific details on those applications because, as, you know, as a, just to respect the boundaries of the 2 agencies, we want to make sure that, you know, DPL is doing what it needs to do. But if everything has checked the boxes, right, and there's nothing else delaying the processing of those applications, why are the applications not moving? The CNMI is facing a lot of different challenges and financial hardships, right? And I'm just saying that if everything has been checked on the box, then let's move forward with it. But Director, if you can answer this, you mentioned earlier about current issues with applications. Are you able to give us a general information as to what you mean by current issues? What are those current issues that's currently hindering, right, the QC process? I mean, I know part of it is the public land lease. Are there any other current issues that you could share with us at this time?
Other than land requirements being met, even like pursuing private land leases takes some time. So we've already discussed the conditional approvals. In terms of the QC, other than that, would just be requests that are outside of the QC law, like extending it beyond 25 years and such. But other than that,
so in your collaboration with DPL, have they shared or expressed any reason why, you know, some of the applications are not moving
Well, you know,
along?
to DPL's credit, you know, I know they do a lot more than just that, but I know that the developer can also throw some kinks into the system when they request things. For example, they could request things of DPL or us that's going to require some analysis or some legwork because maybe it's not explicitly allowed for in the current framework, but we're trying to determine if it can be allowed, for example. So they could be dealing with things like that as well. I mean, the developers have their own requests as well,
Mhm.
which kind of, it can frustrate you as well because you got to work through them. But, you know,
I
it
mean,
could
but
be.
to your knowledge, with DPL, with specific applicants, right? What do you know? What are some of the main issues? That's
Like in terms of like not in terms of processing, but in terms of the actual lease itself,
Mhm.
for example. Well, for example, one of the things that I was really concerned about for all investors and the future of the Marianas in terms of investment is that, for example, if I'm not mistaken, public land leases state that the developers take the land as is, as is. So no matter what happened to that property 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, if you take that public land today, you will be, if I'm not mistaken, you will be responsible for everything that happened prior to your time. Literally, you take on that risk. And that risk could be small, but it could be substantial, millions of dollars. It could be $10 million, for example. That's going to deter developers right away. And we know that in other places in the US, it's the landowner who's responsible for the mitigation before the lessee takes over, right? So, but in our case, if I'm not mistaken, the current public land language, I'm not sure if it's been amended or it's being changed or it can be changed, but if I'm not mistaken, it says you take the land as is, you bear that risk. And that's literally a big concern right now that we need to make a determination on. You know, who bears that risk? Because even private land, I don't believe developers would take private land without doing an assessment first. Right, and and I don't believe they would bear the risk of addressing that anything that they find. Right, they would have the landowner do it before they even take the property. But in this case, it seems like no. I'm sorry. Whatever the 10 years before you did, I'm sorry. You're going to be responsible for it. Whatever happened 20 years ago, it's down there. You're going to be responsible for it. You know, people threw a lot of appliances on your public land without you knowing. Refrigerants or some chemicals might have gone into the dirt. You didn't do it, but you're responsible for it. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, that's the kind of things developers who come here now and in the future will have to face if they want to pursue public land. So that is definitely
that's definitely
a
a conversation that we need to have with DPL. Yes.
That
Senator
takes
Paul.
only one day to resolve. Just go to the AG office and or their legal counsel, right? That shouldn't take more than a day. And to hold up 40 million, 50 million worth of project. So I think it's just a matter of getting the right people in and say, what is the language for these private companies when they lease private land, right? I mean, are they also responsible for what's going on under that public land prior to the lease agreement? Of course not, right? Because something happens there 20 years ago, then they probably just have to move their development on another side of the property or something. But I'm sure that's not, we don't need to reinvent the wheel for that.
Director, is that an issue that some of the investors are, having when they get to the point where they're negotiating with DPL and then DPL is telling them, once you take the land, it's as is, and whatever happened prior to you taking on the lease, you will be responsible. Is that one of the issues that is?
If I'm not mistaken, that is the current language that I think DPL has to deal with. So absent a change in that language, I'm not sure if it's a law or regulation. If I'm not mistaken, that is the situation, yes. And definitely a major concern for developers.
And do you know if that's regulation or law?
That's the part I'm not aware of, if it's law or
Okay.
regulation, yeah.
All right. I will reach out to the secretary and ask him particularly on that.
But what I can say, however, is that, we've been collaborating with the different agencies, and DPL is one of them. And I give those guys a lot of credit because they are they have a vested interest to see this through as well, and I know
Yes.
they're very committed. And I know the secretary, I know this has not been an easy process. So I really, thank those guys for what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? I think we're not quite ready to move on this bill just because there's going to be some amendments made to it. So for the purpose of today's meeting, we will table this particular bill, awaiting some language from the Director Sasamoto, and then along with the other amendments that some of the committee members would like to add or remove to the bill. So members, if there are no objections, we will table this bill for further discussions pending amendments to be made. Perhaps maybe we can discuss a proposed date for sometime next week, if available, so that we can get this bill out as soon as possible, if that's enough time. If not, then I'll check for your availability. So can I get a motion to table House Bill 24-4 HD1 for further discussion?
Motion to table.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. House Bill 24-4 HD1 has been tabled for further discussion. Thank you. Moving along on the agenda, at this time, unless you have anything else to add, Director Sasamoto, with the other bills, you're more than welcome to leave if you want.
I guess I just want to add for the bill regarding the clarification on business licenses. I was actually surprised that situation was occurring. So I definitely support that bill, and I think it rights a definite quote unquote wrong that we can correct. And I
Okay.
think it'll only benefit the community. And I applaud the legislature for entertaining this law. Thank you for this
Great.
bill.
Thank you, Director. So, CJ, members, let's now move back up to new business and entertain House Bill 24-40.
40.
Yes, authored by Representative Marissa Flores to amend Title IV of the Commonwealth Code to clarify the application of business registration, licensing, and tax laws to foreign corporations engaged in land development, infrastructure development, or construction activities in the Commonwealth, including the related development projects performed under or in connection with contracts, subcontracts, or agreements with the U.S. For the record, we did send out our request for comments to Chamber of Commerce. We did receive their comment back on January 7, 2026, and they're in support of the bill. We also sought comments from Department of Commerce, which we received today, and we do have Mr. C.J. Bermudez representing the Secretary of Commerce, Remedio Mafnas. We did solicit comments from Secretary of Finance, and we did receive comments back from her on February 20, 2026. She is in support with recommendations. And then we did also solicit comments from the Attorney General Office, but we haven't received one as of today. So if we can open the floor to Mr. Bermudez to share with the committee members anything that you would like to share pertaining to this bill, and then we can open the floor to the members for questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it brief. I can provide a top-down overview of what this bill intends to do. Personally, I find it pretty straightforward, and I'd be happy to answer questions from the senators as they relate to Commerce's responsibility and participation in what this bill intends to do. In simple terms, really four components here. This bill mainly aims at off-island contractors who are working on federally supported development. It's observed that a lot of them come here to the Marianas and they don't register with our registrar of corporations to conduct business here. in all cases, or obtain a CNMI business license. And this is actually the standard in most places across the United States, where, the exception being if there's a reciprocity agreement between two states for a contractor to do business in that state. You'd have to go to the Secretary of State in that state or whoever holds the seal and register your business and receive a certification of authority to conduct a business there. So this really is just getting the CNMI in line with the rest of the union. But 4 things: you'd have to register with the CNMI Registrar of Corporations before doing business. You'd have to obtain a CNMI business license and comply with CNMI tax laws, and that's why I would defer to the Department of Finance, because a lot of this bill pertains to 1, their enforcement of business license, and 2, their collection of tax. And then obviously 4th, they'd have to face enforcement consequences if they don't do the above 3. And that would include, penalties for non-compliance. Commerce would like to highlight that the bill does not, authorize the taxation of U.S. government or the instrumentalities of the U.S. government. It's not meant to hinder, investment by prime contractors or subcontractors of prime federal contractors. It's really just to get them in line with, our local businesses and contractors here. At the end of the day, Commerce's mandate under the law is to stimulate sustainable economic growth and fair competition, and we find that this bill does exactly that. So Department of Commerce is in support of that. And that's all I have pending any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bermudez. I'm not sure if you received, you have a copy of the comments that we received back from the Secretary of Finance. She is recommending that the Register of Corporations and the Department of Public Works shall, upon request, provide all necessary information and assistance to the Department of Finance to enable effective enforcement. So it appears that she is recommending that the Department of Finance, the Registrar of Corporations, and the Department of Public Works work together to coordinate and ensure that the compliance are complied with. The bill itself, as it is right now, doesn't designate a lead agency, so she's recommending that Department of Finance would take the lead on that. I don't know if Commerce is in support of that recommendation.
Yeah, we don't have a particular position on that. I would only add that, with the opening of the One-Stop Business Permitting Center last year, that kind of provides a great vehicle for the permitting agencies to conduct joint coordination when it comes to the enforcement. And we work actively with finance and DPW on the day-to-day at the One-Stop Center. And, on the other end of that, through the governor's executive order that created that center, is that, we provide uniform enforcement. So, we're happy. We have no position if finance takes the lead. We just, ask that Commerce participate because we are an enforcement agency and we do permitting.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know DPW is not here to provide their input or stance on the bill, but I would think that they would support the bill because it doesn't really hinder any of the practices that they're currently practicing right now. But I will definitely solicit the Secretary of DPW for his comment. And it is a pretty straightforward bill. I don't see any extensive analysis that that we need to move forward with the bill. But at this time, I open the floor to any of the members who may have any questions. Senator Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Director, I wrote a letter on May 12th to the governor and Patrick Guerrero. Did you get a copy of that letter?
I'm not familiar with the letter. No.
Basically, it's a letter, subject matter request for local business participation in FEMA, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers debris removal task orders. This was brought to my attention by members of the community. Basically, concern is that, for example, there is a primary subcontractor that's engaged by the Army Corps of Engineers, and this subcontractor is from out of the Commonwealth. And then it hurts us because normally if if the Army Corps issues an RFP or a bid, right, then our local companies would participate and it would be competitive, but because they hire way in advance somebody from outside. But this is somewhat related, right? So maybe I should ask, are these primary subcontractors registered in the CNMI? Do they pay BGRT? Because if the contract is 1 million and they subcontract it to 5, 6 contractors and the total is only 500,000, by the time they subcontract, we lose out on the 1 million business growth, right? And also, we don't know how those equipments come here and all that. So that's why I like this bill, and I'm just wondering whether this is a practice that happens in all the other U.S. territories, and if they do, then I really want to see our these companies register in the CNMI, and I'm just wondering whether they're all registered here now. I just want to bring that point. I did provide, I guess, copies to the members of this letter because it's a serious concern raised to me, and I wrote it to the governor with respect to kind of like see, because we appreciate all the help from FEMA and Army Corps and all that, but I'm just wondering how our companies here, local companies, can be more directly engaged. That's all. Thank you. I'll give you this copy.
Yeah, I was going to say, Senator, I don't think I'm in a position to comment on that specifically, but I'd love to see the letter. And, at the end of the day, Commerce's mandate is, to promote a competitive environment. And I'm not an attorney, but I do understand that there's some exceptional circumstances for disaster when it comes to contracting for recovery. But I'd love to take a closer look.
Thank you, Mr. Bermudez. Are you okay? Thank you, Senator Paul. Any other members? No. Okay. I don't have any other comments or additions to the bill. So, I guess let me ask the members: are we ready to move forward with the bill as is in its current form? Well, actually, we will probably need to do one amendment, and that's to assign who the lead agency would be, which would be Department of Finance. But aside from that, I don't see any other sections on the bill that.
So I move for its passage, Chair, by the committee, subject to that amendment.
Okay. Can I wait? Short recess.
5611A.
further discussions with the committee members, we are all in agreement that that House Bill 24-40 in its current form is good to go. Can I get a motion to adopt House Bill 24-40, please?
So move, Chair.
Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. House Bill 24-40 has been adopted. If I could please ask the LA to prepare the committee report for the committee to sign off and place the bill on the next Senate session, that would be great. Moving on, I think we're good with Mr. Bermudez here. Thank you so much for coming in to provide your comments and answer some questions that the committee members had. We truly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Moving on to the last bill on the agenda, which is the House Bill 24-47, introduced by Representative Vincent Diego Camacho. The bill proposes to realign the authority and duties of the CNMI Department of Labor and for other purposes. I do believe the team from Department of Labor are here. If you could please join us in the chamber.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. For the record, my name is Jose Kiyoshi. I was only here to support the bill. Unfortunately, our secretary is off island on official. Our acting secretary has a training to attend, but I took it upon myself. Like I said, we have the enforcement employee staff with me today, and if you have any questions regarding this bill, particularly enforcement areas, we can answer it. One recommendation is probably if we can table the bill until my secretary comes back, or like I said, if you have any questions, we would like to see if we can answer it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kyoshi. Can I also have the other two gentlemen state their name for the record and their position title?
See, Jeff Camacho, Labor Investigator Specialist 3.
Thank you.
Norman Roshang, ma'am, labor enforcement.
Okay, great. Thank you. I mean, I would hate for you guys to just waste your time since you're already here. I do agree that perhaps maybe we should table the bill for until the secretary comes back. I'm not sure if she shared with you guys the letter of recommendation on the amendments that she wants to make on the bill, and I could share that with you guys if you want. But since you're here and we have the members here, perhaps if they have any questions that they have for specifically for your scope of work and duty, I'll open up the floor for the members to ask questions pertaining to the bill. Maybe while we're waiting, I could read out the letter that I received from Secretary Staffler. So this letter was dated February 11, 2026, and these are the recommended amendments for this particular bill. Let me just read it. Dear Senator Magofnia, I write to respectfully submit recommended amendments to House Bill 24-47 2447 for the committee's consideration. The proposed changes are technical and clarifying in nature and are intended to improve statutory consistency, administrative implementation, and reporting feasibility. First, the amendments correct division nomenclature to ensure uniformity throughout the measure. As currently drafted, one division within the department is referenced by two different names. The revision aligns all references to the proper and official division title to eliminate ambiguity in interpretation and execution. Second, several amendments refine and expand definitions for clarity. These updates are intended to ensure that the statutory language reflects current operational practices and reduces the potential for misinterpretation. And third, the amendments modernize the definition of media to include digital news publications. Existing language referencing print newspaper does not fully reflect today's media landscape, where recognized online news outlets and digital publications serve as primary sources of public notice and information dissemination. Finally, we recommend extending the statutory timeframe to submit the annual workforce report. The report requires comprehensive data, including the total number of workers employed in the Commonwealth during the reporting year, working citizenship, job classifications, field, and other relevant labor market information. Because this data is collected and finalized on a calendar year basis, the current 120-day deadline does not allow sufficient time for compilation, verification, and analysis. The proposed extension will ensure accuracy and completeness in data integrity in reporting. These amendments are offered to strengthen the bill's implementation, improve administrative clarity, and align statutory requirements with practical data collection timelines. Thank you for your leadership and for the committee's consideration of these recommendations. We remain available to provide any additional information or technical assistance as needed. And so, members, do you have a copy of the recommendation? So specifically on Section 3, Chapter 1, Article 1, the Secretary is recommending that, I guess, letter E, department means Department of Labor or other government department or agency seeking administrative hearing services. So that's the addition, or other government department or agency seeking administrative hearing services. Next on her recommendation is to amend Section 3, Chapter 1, Article 1, Subsection 104, to read as follows. The Department of Labor shall be organized as follows. So she's striking out Division of Administrative Hearing, and it's just adding Administrative Hearing Office. So it's not a division, it's just it's just an office. Is that correct? Okay. The Division of Administrative Services, Division of Employment Services, and Division of Enforcement and Compliance. Do you guys have a copy of this recommendation by any chance?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Can we? Yeah, thank you. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like we have about 7 amendments to the bill recommended by the Secretary of Labor. Short recess. discussions with the labor team here, and I think we have, we are all in agreement, and we have the consensus that the committee will table this particular bill 24-40 for further discussion with the Secretary of Labor herself and the rest of the team. From what we gather, there are more amendments that the team is recommending. So at this time, can I get a motion from the the committee to table House Bill 24-40 for further discussions with the Secretary of Labor and her team?
Madam Chair, at this time I move to table House Bill 2447.
Or 47, my apologies. Do I hear a second? Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. House Bill 24-47 is hereby tabled for another time with more discussions with the Secretary of Labor and her team. At this time, I would like to thank you, Mr. Kyoshi, and to your fellow colleagues for coming in to share with us your thoughts and input and recommendations and answering some of the questions that the members asked. And we will see you at the next committee level, hopefully with some of the recommendations that we talked about earlier. So thank you for your time. If you have any closing remarks, feel free to do so now.
Just for information, the secretary will be coming back, I believe, on the 15th.
Okay.
So thank you
We'll reach
again.
out to her and
Yes.
we'll check on the availability of the committee members and the secretary herself.
Yes,
So
thank you again, and I hope that we get a favorable approval on the budget. Thank you.
Sidusmasi, Mr. Kyoshi. Have a good day. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn today's committee meeting? Thank you. Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We now, with that, the committee meeting is now adjourned at 12:10 p.m. Sidusmasi. Thank you.